Coach, you're on my camera, dude. You're on my camera. What's up, guys? Welcome to Pillar Talk. It's me and Coach.
How you guys doing? Good to see you guys again. Glad to have you guys back on listening.
Yeah, we got a special guest today. We got Ricky Cain, and he's live from the Ukraine. I keep saying the Ukraine. You don't have to add the every time, but for some reason I do. Real quick, thank our sponsors. So BrainJerk's brought to you by Kennedy Health and Wellness, BrainJerk, Smoker Society, and the Monroe County Reporters. We're sponsored by the Little Brown Jug, Amaya's what? Fresh Mexican Grill, 8 Mile Vodka, Mint Cannabis, IWR, Lane's Pizza, and Just Drive with Jess. So as always, the links are all in the bio. So now to our guest, Ricky Cain. Tell us, who the hell are you?
Well, I graduated Monroe High / Orchard in 2004. Just a normal guy, or I would say I'm a normal guy. Some may not think I'm normal. After all, being in Ukraine is a definite not normal.
You're right.
Or being out on the boundary on the far end. I have an IT business, which is Cain Tech Services, and then I do photography on the side. It's kind of my creative arm, which is Cain's Photography. I've done that since I was like early, middle 20s and still do that. I do that in Ukraine. And how to put it, there's some businesses within Monroe that I still deal with and know. And I keep in touch with everything. Everyone knows me on Facebook, and that it's one of them things. You join an organization in Monroe, and that pumps you around for business wise. But what else would you want to know about Ukraine?
You said you have an IT business and you're a photographer. So what kind of photography?
It's kind of, how to put it, it's more kind of like my little creative passion. So if someone was to look at my Instagram, which is Cain's Photography, my last name Cains Photography, you would see basically like kind of an assortment of like photo shoots with some random girls and kind of like the creative style, whatever I thought of in the moment. And that some of them for Ukraine, I paid some models to like have a creative project and all of that. And then in Monroe, I did more kind of event work. So if there was a fair parade or this or that, I did photos for that. Or say like if there was some kind of private event.
Okay. So I'm gonna let Coach get into the beef here because really, I'll ask the first question about Ukraine. How did Ricky Cain get to Ukraine?
Great question.
Well, as I tell even Ukrainians, by accident. And what I mean by accident, I never came searching for a wife, never came for sex tourism or whatever else Ukraine is known for in general. The best way to put it is 10 years ago, so like 2010, 2009, I did some traveling to Latvia and to Russia and to Belarus. So I was already doing some Eastern European travel then. That was 13 years ago now. And I realized that first, everything is cheaper in Eastern Europe. Then I kind of liked the culture. Everyone's laid back. Everyone's doing whatever they want to do. No one cares about government in Eastern Europe. They actually always hate it. And then I started to grow my IT business. And then basically, let's say about 2016, 2017-ish, I had a friend in that who was a photographer at the Monroe News. She moved to Poland and started teaching English to Polish. At some point, she talked me into going to where she was at in Poznan, Poland. So I went over in like late 2017. Then when you go into European Union, you can only stay 3 months. So after 3 months, you have to go somewhere that's not European Union. And so I asked some people in Warsaw, and they said, go to Ukraine, go to Ukraine. And I never went. So I thought, why not? And when I was there, the sticker shock was the biggest thing. Was like, keep in mind, I'm thinking 2018 and 2019 pricing, because I've been in Ukraine about 4 to 5 years and 10 months. I only spent 10 months in the past 5 years in Monroe. And like, if a Little Caesars pizza was like $5.99, or like say Mary Sacco's or Tiffany's was like $10, okay? In Lviv, which is a city in the west near Poland, and that a pizza would be $3, the same size, the same type, maybe a little bit of a different taste. Or basically anything that we would buy in Monroe for one price would be 70% less or 50% less, sometimes 90% less than what it would be in Monroe. And that kind of made me stay for 8 months. And then
With me too.
well, yeah, basically the dollar goes further, but that's what got me to stay in the first 8 months. Then I went back, talked to some clients. Some clients weren't happy I was gone for 8 months. And I convinced some clients to be okay with me being over here. And I stayed over here from May 2019 to January 2023, and then came back in May 2023 till now. And I'm still here. And I can't describe it. Like, I can get a taxi, basically like their version of an Uber or a Lyft, for $2 to $4 and travel 10 miles if I need to. In that, it's just it can be ridiculous. What?
Taxis in New York.
Oh yeah, well that's a whole nother.
You have to pay $30 or something like that.
Yeah, no, it can be ridiculously cheap. Like, another example, they have a train, basically like the Amtrak, their version of an Amtrak, for the whole country. And for me to go like about 90 miles on the train, if I want to get like second class, it'll cost me like say $3 to $5. If I want first class, $7. If I want to go to Kyiv, which is about 6 hours, 7 hours away, at second class, it'll cost me about say $8 or $9. First class, $14. And like if I want the bare minimum nothing, it would cost me like $4 in that. But I prefer at least some nice normal seating.
So was that like your main motivation? Is that kind of the big motivation? Is there other stuff to it to kind of stay there? Or was it just cost of living?
Well, a bit of cost of living. And I realized, how to put it, in IT, sometimes you'll get a hit with a wall, or what I call a wall. Like you can't be more creative in one direction or another direction. So I needed to figure out how to get around the wall. And from my perspective, when I went into Ukraine, I realized that I can hire programmers, Ukrainian programmers, for a lot less. Like, quite a few Ukrainian programmers are fine with being paid like $300 to $500 a month to get some project done, whether it's an iOS app or something else. And so it makes it more accessible, as opposed to chasing the iOS developer that wants $10,000 to $20,000, and you have to do this, and then there's all the taxes, and you know what I mean, like the bureaucracy side of it. And it's just more straightforward. It's more simplistic and straightforward. And like another thing, like say if a photographer pays a model in Michigan or in the US, it's like, oh, like $100, $500, $1,000 for the time, the hours, and everything. And here I pay like a girl maybe $20 for like 4 or 5 hours of shooting.
So a business decision.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's more simple.
Business cost of life.
Well, it's kind of like the best. It is a bit of it's a bit of business decision, and then I just realized I can live better than that, and so I just decided that. And some clients thought I was a little wacky and crazy for that thinking, but then coronavirus and the war, and it doesn't matter who I talk to. One person thinks I'm crazy for a different reason. Some Ukrainians think I'm crazy because I never left. Some other Americans think I'm crazy. I remember right before the whole invasion, everyone's going, get out, get out, get out. I'm like, the Ukrainians don't care, so I don't care.
So what would you say out of curiosity? So, I mean, because I feel like someone's clapback would kind of be like, or somebody's pushback would kind of be like, is it worth living a little bit cheaper cost of living, business opportunity? Is that worth it with, the risk of dealing with what's kind of going on there now?
Well, in terms of the news, not making it a political thing, like the war, what you can call the war, if you want to call it a war, what they say on the news is one thing. So they make it sound like a World War II or a Vietnam style type of thing. And it's not really that. So like, I would say like, say 70 to 80% of the country is normal. So like, let's say if California flipped up, like fell off the map and became like this rampant crime thing, something like Escape from LA or Escape from New York, etc. That's what I would think in a way that what it would be like. So on the far east of Ukraine, the war is there. But in order to go from where I am at, or let's say the Polish Ukrainian side, to where the physical war is at, you would have to travel almost 2 days by car or by train.
Damn.
Whoa.
And that.
You didn't know
And
that big, huh?
Whoa, did not know that. I'm amazed by that because he's right. Like the news, and I'm very careful about my news. But the news, like no matter where you kind of hear it over here, makes it sound like it's kind of like a whole just battle all over the country. So that's definitely interesting from somebody who's really there.
They make it sound like Russia has invaded the Ukraine,
Right.
and they're killing everyone. Is actually
Right.
what they make
well,
it.
yeah, and or it's random. Now, the one thing that I can explain too. So Russia and all that will send in some drones, like to do a bombing mission or whatever. But the best way to put it is like, so like Ukraine has, let's say, about 5 major cities. They have Lviv, which has about 1 million. Kyiv is usually, before the war, would have 10 million, but it's at about 5 million. Then they have Kharkiv, which is out near the border, which is about like 2 million normally, but it's less now. But Kharkiv is like 10 to 20 miles from the Russian border. Okay, so it's out on the northeast side. And there's Odessa, there's Dnipro. All of these cities have like, let's say like 5 million and less. So every other town, every other city and all that is like 200,000 people, 100,000 people, 50,000 people. There's even villages with like 1,000 people, and nothing is going wrong there in that. And so like in Lviv, There's a few times where there was actual drone attacks and there was a missile attack, which on the day of the war, which I was talking with a teacher that was my teacher back in high school, that's when it happened. And the best way to put it is I was awake when it happened, but by like 7, 8 in the morning, and that I heard the siren, which is the same siren sound as a tornado siren. And there was a plume of smoke outside of my window, not near me, but they hit the airport in the town that I was in. But like nowadays, I'm in a small town that's the same size as Monroe, which is like 50, 60,000 people. There's nothing in the town in that. So I figured if they were to go so far west, where I'm at would be the last place that they would look for any American.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other part too, I thought about more. It was a side thought too later, but I realized that where I live, even though I'm in the west of Ukraine, the only important things in the area, there might be some little military targets here and there, but where I'm at, I'm right around mountains. So if the Russians want to go skiing, like in Red Dawn, there was a part in Red Dawn that
Great.
they went to the mountains and everything else. There's a thing called Bukovel, which they basically Ukrainians go skiing and all of this. So unless they want to go skiing and snow diving and mountain climbing, that's what's around me.
Okay. So winter sports are pretty heavy over there.
I would say it's Bukovel is like the Swiss Alps version for Ukrainians.
Okay.
It's their version of a Swiss Alps.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know anything about Ukraine.
100%. Me either.
So
Well,
everything we hear from you today is all news to me.
Fresh education, man. But it's awesome to have somebody over there on the ground kind of like telling you what's real. You know what I mean? I appreciate that. Do you have long-term plans to be there?
well, I flew it by the seat of my pants the whole time. So 8 months became like 3 to 4 years and everything else. And I'll tell you something funny, which will sound really funny for political talk because of all the politics in the US. How do I want to put this? I actually 2 times, I did this 2 times. I violated Ukraine's immigration law. So what happens is when you go into, let's say, European Union or Ukraine or whatever with the US passport, you have a certain amount of time you're allowed to be there. Usually it's 90 days. Some countries it's longer, some countries it's this or that. So when I was here the first 8 months, I stayed too long, so I violated the visa agreement that the US and Ukraine have. And I turned myself in because that was the best advice. And what happens is the fine was $100. So basically it's a slap on the wrist. And they basically fine you $100 and say, leave the country for 3 months. And then you can come back in. And I did this twice. The second time I did it, I stayed basically from May 2019 to January 2023, which is 2.5, 3 years, getting close to 4. And this fine was nearly the same. They just increased it by like $5 to $10. And that, but when I came in back in May, I made sure that I would be legal this time around, so I could do some more legal stuff. I can buy property and that. And so this time around, I'm actually a legal resident.
Nice.
For all the BS politics that's going on in the U.S. about immigration. It's a funny little
How
like
long you got to be
idea.
a citizen?
Uh, I probably would not do the citizenship. They after 5 years, they give you a choice if you're here for 5 years. They will either give you a permanent residency or they offer a passport. So that would be the citizenship in that. But it's one of the two, and you can choose. You don't have to get citizenship
I'd take
in that. But
give me that passport. Passport from everywhere I can.
What are some of the other cultural kind of differences or things that when you went over there were kind of shocking to you when from, coming from the US?
well, the best way to explain Ukraine, which some Ukrainians get upset about because they think it's more of an insult, but it's actually a compliment, is the culture in general, if you relate it, is something going back to say early 1930s and 1950s US by culture and that. So there's a lot more well, as they would say, a lot more masculinity or toxic masculinity or whatever. But
Code word toxic.
call it what you want.
Yeah, I
But
figured.
basically, guys do what they want. They always pay. The girl will always doll herself up. She likes to look beautiful because she wants to look beautiful, always wanting to wear heels, etc., etc. This is true for Ukraine. This is true for Latvia. This is true for Russia, even by culture sense. In
Okay.
that, but this is why I say it's like something from 1930s, 1950s USA. So, like, even when girls do a job, but even when girls do a job, like when they apply for a job, they actually hand over a photo of themselves as well in the resume CV part so that you know what they look like. It's all normal over here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds interesting, man, just because of how much obviously it's changed over here and how things have um,
Yeah, in a way,
how
it's
the
like going
direction
back
things
in
have
time.
went in. So it's interesting to hear that.
Well, it's basically like going back in time in a way. Between cost of living and culture, it's like going back in time. So it's more, if someone doesn't like you, they will immediately say it. If they like you, they will obviously say it too. It's simpler thinking in a way. And that, so immediately if someone hates you, if immediately if someone likes you in both ways.
Sounds like I
And,
need to come to Ukraine for a day or two.
well, it's not that you need to come to Ukraine. Anywhere in Eastern Europe, you can try Bulgaria too. A funny thing too, Ukrainians, what they do usually will go to Egypt or Bulgaria, or they go to Turkey. And that's because like Turkey is for Ukrainians, Turkey is like Ukraine for Ukrainians because it's cheap enough for them to travel to and back and forth.
Okay.
And there's a lot of Turkish guys that say, "Oh, I'm a rich prince, come to Turkey, come to Turkey. It's also beautiful."
Mhm.
In that. But they tell this to all the Ukrainian girls and everything else. It's their woo tactic.
Come here, we are princes of Turkey.
Yeah, a few Turkish guys told me. Then some Ukrainian girls told me their experience in Turkey as well. In a way, it's always funny a little bit.
What kind of like food and stuff? We're all about food over here, and I
Um,
probably spend half my paycheck on food every couple weeks. What kind of food is over there? Like,
Facts.
I know they
the
have like your typical
almost
food, but what are some special Ukrainian dishes that you love?
well, actually, some of what we know by a different name. So, we know Polish pierogies are just pierogies, right?
Right?
If That's how we know them. But if you're in Ukraine, it's called Veronike. It's not Polish. Well, between whatever it is between Poland and Ukraine, the Polish will say it's Polish pierogies. The Ukrainians will say it's Veronike. Ukrainians say they invented it. Who knows who invented it? But it's a fight of who invented it. So you would see pierogies over here. That's like the main thing. I'm not a fan of borscht because borscht is like some red soup. It's like a beet soup, and I'm not a soup guy. Um, they have this is not Ukrainian, but it's accepted within culture. There's a Georgian dish which is called a hachapuri, and it's basically like a circle of bread. They make a circle of bread and they put an egg in the middle, and it's either covered in meat or cheese inside of it.
Oh yeah,
And
give me that.
and it tastes very good, at least from my opinion. I always like it. And and also the one thing too, when I traveled in 2009, 2010, besides walking around everywhere, I probably did like say 2 to 3 miles a day of walking. In Ukraine also, I lost weight, so I was a bigger guy in Monroe. But then when I went into Ukraine, just like in Latvia and Russia and Belarus, I lost weight. So I'm somewhere around 200 pounds, but I was probably like 250 to 270 when I was in Monroe.
Just because you mentioned that, out of curiosity, like over here we have a problem with our food and like pharmaceuticals and all that. That's a whole big thing, right? But do you feel like it's because you took up exercising, or do you feel like the quality of the food had something to do with it?
You know, it's hard to say. Like when I spent 3 years here, it was like the food has a very strong taste to everything. Everything is kind of like really strong when you taste it. When I went back to Monroe in January to May of 2023, it was funny because everyone told me I had coronavirus, but I didn't. I started eating the food, like say at the New York JFK airport or this place or that place, or even at my grandma's, etc. And I didn't taste anything. It kind of felt like it was like some kind of cardboard. Like I knew I was eating something, but I
It is bland. I agree. Listen, I say it all the time, and Monroe doesn't want to hear it. But not everybody's food. There are a few places here that have very seasoned good food, but most of the places here don't season their food enough. It's
well,
very
but
bland.
but that was what was so funky is I started like talking on the phone with my friends, and I'm going, I don't taste anything. It just tastes like I'm eating, but I don't know what I'm eating, even though I know what I'm eating.
Yeah, that sounds like
And,
COVID, all right.
well, but still, like they're all saying you have COVID. And I go, I'm not sick. I know I don't have COVID, and like I can't explain it. Like everything over here, I would. I haven't been in Germany other than a few days on and off, but anything from like say Poland or Ukraine or somewhere Eastern Europe, it's got a real strong taste in that, and it kind of if you're not used to it, it can knock you out, or you get like addicted to the taste and you want more. But
I wonder if that's from like just having better ingredients, or just like I wonder why that is, or like you said, maybe just cooking with more seasoning. Just a style of cooking.
I do know, as far as what I do know, anyway, the bread is treated differently over there. The foods, certain foods over here, there's no way in hell they would have them over there. There's way less ingredients in their foods. It's more whole food.
See, yeah, that's the big problem with us over here right now.
but it's just one of them things, and you know, for me, I looked at it, the positives of being here as opposed to the negatives, besides people saying I'm crazy on the left or crazy on the right or crazy above me one way or another. And, you know, at the end of the day, like I kind of convinced probably maybe say 4 friends of mine in that to at least come over and try to be in Ukraine at one point. I met a guy from Texas who now is married to a Ukrainian girl, but I met him in Ukraine during coronavirus. He left, went back to Texas. Then the war started, and he was nervous to come. And I said, no, everything's fine, blah, blah, blah. Don't look at the news, etc. And he got connected with a girl that he knew beforehand. He comes back with me in May and gets married by June. And now his girlfriend now / wife is pregnant and she's due in March. But what's really funny is he comes over, gets married, everything else, and let's say less than 90 days, I'm here 6 years and I don't get married. And that, so it's a funny thing. It shows you my priority is a little off, or not in the correct order for some, maybe. But
maybe for some, but I also think that people put too much into trying to find a woman or a man or whatever you're into, right? Instead of finding who themselves are, what they like. And
Yeah, things like that should fall into place if they do and when they do. It should never be like forced or, you know.
Yeah.
Dude, I've been in the US 30 some years. I don't have a girlfriend either.
Well, you know, one thing, going back to culture, when you're saying culture differences, you know, actually, to me, it depends on the person. It's really about personality, but there can be some really, I would say, child decisions Ukrainian girls can do. Ukrainian women, I refer to it as a reverse Ike and Tina Turner syndrome a little bit. It's my short way to explain it. So, you know, usually it's the guy that's jealous, the guy gets controlling, the guy is doing this, and then the cops are called on the guy, etc., restraining order, whatever. In Ukraine, it's the reverse. It's the women that act that way.
Don't you fuck with her.
That's interesting.
But no, like if you need to censor this part, I'll give you a little bit uncensored explanation. Well, the best way to put it is I once knew 2 or 3 girls, okay? Where obviously I know more than 2 or 3, but I was confused by some actions. I thought it was something cultural. So I went to one girl and I said, I don't understand this. So is it something I'm doing wrong culturally? What happened is the first girl didn't speak good English. She spoke okay English, but not so great. But she kept doing this hot and cold disappearing, but then she'd say, well, no, I don't have a man, but I don't want a man, but I this, but I that. So I wanted a second opinion. Me asking the second opinion pissed off the second girl in that. And she goes, I want to see a picture. And she goes, she's a Jew. She has curly hair. And she just went into this rant. Of, you know, girls with curly hair. Jews all have curly hair. They all have curly hair. You know, sometimes they use special soap, etc., etc. I mean, and all I wanted was a second opinion of, did I say something wrong? Should I have done this or that? That's all I wanted to hear. But the girl went off the deep end for it, just because I was asking an opinion. And at one time I tried to have her translate for me to the other girl. It was I just thought I took both of them as just friends. And the reason why, it was in my first 8 months and I didn't know if I was going to be back. But it, it was a bit more strange. Then
It would be kind of strange, honestly, you know, because what language do they speak? Ukrainian?
yeah, Ukrainian, but
So obviously you're fluent enough, aren't you?
well, I speak like a 5-year-old, so it's like I can look like a cute cat.
Meow.
Like, you get the idea. Basically, it's like
Man.
there is English inside of Ukrainian, because English is a world language. It fills in different places. So like
Right.
if someone says like, "Oh, who are you?" or says something to me, I go like, "Oh, yeah, American, that's chut-chut Ukrainsky." So it's like I know a little bit of Ukrainian. But to understand chut-chut, which sounds like choo-choo, choo-chut means a little bit. But we know choo-choo from a train
Right.
in that. So there's some similarities, and they have some numbers that are actually a little bit funny. For the number 16, Ukrainians will say "shit's not it," but if you slow it down, "shit is not it."
I was just about to say that. I'm not even kidding.
But I picked up on
Like,
it, and
shit's not it.
well, but I picked up on ways to remember the language.
Right.
But I speak like a 5-year-old in a way, and like there's the word for ant is called titka, in that, which I thought was very close to tits.
Titka.
Hey, but that's how we were taught in school, right? Find things to make your memory kind of click on
Dude,
certain
that's how I
rules
use
and
numbers.
numbers.
I find
And also too, like the word for like student, the word for student is studentka. In that, so there's actually some English inside of Ukrainian that got adopted, and they just like added a certain sound at the end of it and everything.
What about like technology over there, man? Like we're getting so advanced over here with like just social media, AI, everything. And Americans, obviously, we know we spend a lot of time on our phones on streaming services and whatnot. Like, what is it like over there?
Depends on what area. So if it's banking, and this will sound really funny, but if it's banking, Ukraine is ahead of the US by 30 or 40 years.
In
And-
banking?
Yeah, in banking, which will sound really funny because this is the corrupt country, et cetera, et cetera. Or as people would think it's the corrupt country.
Right, that's what we've been told on the news, right? Like that's
is it because
right. Don't get me wrong, there is corruption, but your definition of corruption is one definition, and different person's definition of corruption can be different. That's what's going on. But going to the banking, so in Ukraine, basically kind of like say like Venmo and Cash App and everything else, back in like say 2010 to 2005, they started their own banking. It's an internal banking. So like if you want to pay your friends in Ukraine, you just get their card number and the money instantly goes in. It doesn't take anything. It's all instant. All of it is absolutely instant. So like, no one writes checks here. There's no idea of checks in that. So either everyone carries cash or everything is in the bank, and they just get someone's card number and they pay immediately, and then they get a notification on their phone. And they have the banking, because the banking is tied to an identification in some way. That can be tied to, like, say, if you need to go to a concert or you need to pay like a little ticket fee to go get on the train or whatever. and that all of that is tied into the banking. So you just show the banking thing and it will QR code scan, and it's just there. It's just there immediately. And that like when I do a train travel like type of thing, I get an email with a QR code, and that it says where I'm going. It has my name on it, but it has a QR code and everything. And depending on the person that works on the train, they'll either scan the QR code or they just look and they just like go on the phone and they just move it around a little bit. And that's what they do. And they say, okay, go ahead on.
That's
And that.
exactly where we're heading.
And that, but that's what's so funny. In some ways, Ukraine is ahead of the U.S. But then let's say in some other ways, Ukraine is like early 1900s U.S. in some other ways.
Right. That's why I wanted to ask that, because I that you said earlier it's a lot of old school, and I'm like, are your young kids over there TikToking? You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Yeah,
I was
there's a
just
lot.
curious. You know, is like Chat GBT like a thing over there? Like but the banking part that's super interesting.
Well, like I don't know if it'll show on the screen, but like so if I run up they call it a privat, which is the main bank in Ukraine. So it will run, or whoops, let me do it like that. So I
Okay.
have to do my touch ID, and then like that's one card. I have a virtual card in that, and then it gives me in English. The options are in English in that. Not sure if you can see it. I can send it to you later. But like it gives me options of a map, if I want to add money to my phone, if I want to buy a train ticket, my credit limits, my credit rating, anything else, or I can even pay like a ticket. Like let's say if I got a traffic ticket, I can pay via the banking app.
Do you ever worry about like? I know this is kind of a tough question, but do you ever worry about like whether it be I don't know how things are over there with getting canceled, like they kind of can do to you here, but like, do you ever worry about in that type of situation where everything's right here, them being able to kind of just freeze things or put a stop to things at all, or is that just something you just think it's technology?
Uh, I think it probably can happen in the future. I think it can happen, and it's more likely. Ukrainians have a thing called DIA, and what DIA is it's all of your documentation digitized, your tax ID and everything, your passport, all of it. So like Ukrainians don't really carry around physical ID cards anymore. They just carry around their phone, and everything is on this app. And that, so if someone asks, they just show them the digital copy of whatever is there, and then they take a picture of it. I'll give you an example too. Like about 5 days ago, it was a little bit funny. In Ukraine, it's only happened to me once. Once. This is how horrendous the police are in Ukraine, or police, or uh, call it Secret Service, or their version of an FBI, whatever it is. I don't know who they were exactly. So I was on a train. I get into one city at 6 in the morning. When I got into the city at 6 in the morning, the hotel is open, but if you book in too early, they'll double book you. Okay. So I didn't want to be double booked. So I killed time around the train station. I went to a pizza place, ate a pizza, was there for a few hours, moved to like a kebab place, and sat there for a few hours just on my phone doing nothing. And right when I decided to walk out of the kebab place for a taxi, a guy goes, document, document. And I go, huh? And I didn't realize it, but I got surrounded by like, say, 3 or 4 other guys. And I said, oh, yeah, Americanets, blah, blah, blah. I go, you mean passport? Passport? And they go, oh, talk, talk. And talk is yes. And I go, oh, well, I have this, and here is my passport. Each of them are looking at both forms of my ID. I have a residency ID card. So they look at it, they go, how long you've been in Ukraine? I said, like 4 years. Why are you in Ukraine? You have wife? No. One guy goes like, oh, an American boy. A Trump? I looked at him because he was taller than me. And I looked at him like, what do you mean, Trump? Like, he didn't continue. But I was confused, like Trump what?
Trump,
And
American boy.
That's how he categorized an American.
I think they were just trying to gauge my reaction.
That's just crazy to me, though. Like,
But-
just
But what happens is they asked that, and they took a picture of my ID. They took a picture of my passport page, which had my U.S. part. And I said, I'm waiting for a taxi. Should I cancel, or is everything okay? Dobre is okay in Ukrainian. And they said, no, everything is okay. And I said, okay, well, I can go to my taxi because it was waiting a little bit. And they said, yeah, sure. They said, can you give us your phone number? And I said, yeah, sure. And I gave them my phone number. They said, in a few days, we might give you a call. And I said, okay. And that was it. They never called me. They never called me at all. I talked to a lawyer friend that's in Kyiv, and he said, Ricky, they were bored. They had nothing to do. And so they thought, oh, let's see what his thing is. And that was it. And because my documents and everything is legitimate, they completely ignored it. But to understand, this happened one time from 2018 to now.
Right.
And like that's how in your face the police are, or FBI is, in a sense. And then the other thing, when it was the first start of the war, I went through a few checkpoints, and I was illegal in the country at the time. So I was like you say, Ricky Cain in Ukraine, I actually referred to it as being a Mexican in Ukraine.
He's illegal.
And but what happens is I went through one checkpoint, and they all knew I was illegal. There was an army guy and like 5 other cops. They were looking through, and they're like, And the one guy speaks to me in English. He goes, say you were here for 2 years. I go, I was here 4. And he goes, no, just say you were here for 2 years. I go, oh, yes, I'm here for 2 years. It's a Ukrainian cop telling me what to say. And that. And he goes, I go, everything is okay? He goes, yes, don't worry. And like 5 minutes later, I was in the car, and no one asked another question. There was another checkpoint, but the guy goes, can you turn your computer on? I go, well, it's dead. And he goes, oh, okay. And that was the end of that checkpoint. Then when I was in the Capitol, which had more security at the time, I was with the friend that's a lawyer that got me my residency later. And he was with me in that. And he works in the military, and he works in the Ukrainian Congress. So he's connected. And we were going into town. The guy realizes that I'm illegal, and he goes, you can't do this. You can't do this. What are you doing in this country? You can't do this to us, blah, blah, blah. This goes on for 5 or 10 minutes, and he goes, I can pull you from the car and get you arrested and deport you. The friend of mine that's Ukrainian and that's a soldier walks out a few minutes later, shows his ID, and talks with him. And a few minutes later, he walks away with my passport, walks in a circle, like he's walking, like, say, 5 feet away, then spins around and hands me back the passport with me sitting in the car. And he goes, have a nice day. And I asked my friend Yuri, I asked him, I said, what did you say? And he goes, I asked him, so who are we hunting today, Russians or Americans? And he was telling my Ukrainian friend, he goes, your friend can't do this. And he goes, he's working with us. He's working with us. And I do on and off. I work with some like military or give some advice or do VPN stuff and explain some things to them. I do this on the side, like a contractor guy. Basically, I'm like not like the Iraq contractor guy, but like just I give advice, I give my opinion and whatever. But it's just like that. And the third time that it happened was the most hilarious. I went to go buy a camera lens and that like this and that. I went to go buy a camera lens from one town, and I had to go through a checkpoint. When the girl comes up, it was a girl. She came up and she goes, I need to see your passport. I go, oh, by the way, I'm illegally here, but I have a friend that you can talk to. He's also in the military like you. And she goes, I gotta make a call. And I called my friend Yuri and I said, hey Yuri, you want to talk to this girl, blah, 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 explain it to her. She talks with him and she then hands back the passport like 5 minutes later and she goes, go on, go on. And he told me that she said, if I ever see your friend, he's gonna get deported, blah, blah, blah. And that, like she said that. But he said they won't do it because it costs too much money to deport and they have more bigger fish to fry than deporting an American.
That's funny. That is.
And
you know how much it costs to deport somebody?
In the U.S. or in Ukraine? I have no clue.
I was just curious, like, is that must be an expensive thing?
Honestly, I didn't even think about the cost of deporting somebody. I'm just thinking like, oh, just send them back.
Right.
Duh, it costs money to do it.
Well, you know what makes it really interesting? I think it's just an American thing, or maybe also a European thing, that Ukrainians look at Americans and Europeans. When I turned myself into immigration, just like going down to a police station, so to speak, when I turned myself in, like, they write up the paperwork and they say, pay the fine. You pay the fine. And, they basically say, you need to leave within 2 weeks. If you don't leave within 2 weeks, there will be another problem, which means you're not following what's said. So they let you self-deport in Ukraine. That's what's the more interesting thing about it, is they let you self-deport. If you turn yourself in, you can do it at the border, but that's a different thing. But I chose to go the path of least resistance, because if I did it at the border, they would pull me off the bus. They would ask for the bus to take all my things off the bus. Then I would be sitting at the border. Then I would have to figure out how to cross the border and get to the next town and get another bus. It's just more simple just to go down to the immigration office, like a police office, and say, hey, I've been a bad boy. Slap me sometimes.
So before we get out of here, we talked right before we went live about the martial law situation over there, and you did touch on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Go into a little bit more detail from like start to beginning of the martial law experience. When did it go into effect because of COVID, or did it go into effect because of the war?
It went into effect because of the war. There was, during COVID, they did a thing that they made all the businesses shut down at like 10 or 11 p.m. during COVID. But that was not always so strictly enforced as well. But with the martial law, you would see, like I said, when you were entering a city or a town, you would see, I forgot the name of it, but what you would see in Saving Private Ryan, which would be at D-Day, the not the tire irons, but I can't think of the name. You would see those, the hedgehogs, they're hedgehogs. You would see the hedgehogs around, and you knew that was a checkpoint in that. And then you would see some like concrete facade or like some kind of type of thing. And that would be it. But like the checkpoints is not like, let's search you. It's not open up everything. It's, hi, let me see your passport. Okay, it's okay. And then go ahead. It's very quick, kind of like, like if the police put a barricade up to catch, like, say, a criminal on the loose, so to speak, and that they just want to look at you, look at the ID, and then be done with it. And that's what it was like if you go in and out of a city. But in the sense of the martial law, it's more you should not be out past a certain time. But if you're doing some things for the country or the government, they give you a certain pass that you can be out past the curfew. But you have to have a good reason to be out past the curfew and that. So I have a pass that if I want to go roaming around the city, even though there's nothing open right now, and that I can walk around and they'll question me and they'll say, well, okay, you're working for an NGO, you're working for this. And if they have more questions, they would call a certain number and someone on the other line would explain it and that. So in that say, I'm kind of shielded, but not every Ukrainian has that. You're supposed to get a fine if you're out past curfew and that.
What time is curfew?
Basically midnight, 1 a.m. till like 5 a.m. In other words, the dark time when they can move a lot of shit.
Okay, yep.
And that.
Well, Ricky, I'm starting to get feedback all of a sudden. Let me turn you down over here. Let's get a hold of your social media. How does anybody get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you? And then we'll get out of here.
Okay, my personal Facebook or like my business
However,
Facebook?
whether it's your IT business or your photography, or they just want to have a chat.
Okay, sure. My Instagram, which is my photography, would be Cain's Photography. So CAINS Photography. Then my Facebook for the business side, it would be just do a search for like Cain Tech Services, and that my last name Tech and then Services LLC. And me personally, you would just search Ricky Thomas Cain. Very simple like that.
You got anything else?
No, I just want to say, Ricky, I was coming into the podcast today, just didn't know what to expect. I just want to tell you I appreciate you. Learned a lot. Great conversation, man. Very insightful and just a great time today, man. Just want to tell you again, thank you for coming on. I know time is valuable. Appreciate you.
What time is it there?
Right now it's 2:01. But I'll give you another funny example with winter and everything else. My bills, 1 second, let me give you an idea in dollars. I have a currency calculator here in that. 1 second. I can tell you it's not over $30 for all of my utilities in that. So let me see. I'm serious. I'm being serious.
Our producer Keith over here, his jaw about hit the floor when you said that.
Well, okay, I got a message from the owner of my apartment, and he told me that my bills are about 880 grivna or 800 grivna. If I do 800 grivna for gas, water, electric, it's $21.
Wow.
And the funniest thing is I've had the like all of the bills in total, like during the summer, $10. Like water, like for a whole month, shower, everything else, like $3. Electric, $4. In the summer, like heat, gas, $5 all total in the summer. But even now it's cheap. It's different for some that are running heat all the time on really hot. They might get like say 30, 40, $60, maybe $80 a month for the gas portion because of winter. But it's really cheap. Oh, and I'm paying $190 for 600 square foot.
So on that real quick, did I see that you can buy actual apartments? Just the apartments, or is it the whole building you have to buy?
No, you buy, well, they have a quirky logic. So you can buy an apartment for, if it's, let's say 30, 40, 50 years old and it's in a city that no one knows, you can buy apartments for like 20 or $40,000. That's one side. If it's like in a big city, it will be closer to $50,000. But they have apartments that are like say like up to 2,000 square foot, and it might be like 80,000 in that. But in regards, it will have actually everything modern in it if it's at that price. It'll have, like, if you see in the background, I have well, one second, if I point correctly, there's a dishwasher there. I have a stove there, everything, but I'm paying $190 a month for it. And I've, like, if I wanted a 3,000 square foot penthouse, which I had once, I was paying $450 a month.
That's
Making me jealous, Ricky King.
Differences, man. Differences.
Well, hey, with that, I appreciate you. I know it's late over there.
Yeah,
You
sure.
have a great night.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Ricky.
Yep, no problem.